Hello, today we have Jiulio Consiglio. We have done a video in the past and we discussed about your spiritual journey. You know, you shifted your life one to another, completely different way. And that was amazing story. But today we would like to focus on extraterrestrial communication and encounter, if you don't mind. So thank you being here, Jiulio. Again.
Thanks for having me, Kaya. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
So I've been watching your Instagram for at least a few years, and amazing thing is happening to your backyard. Almost every night, like you see objects and UFOs appear to your backyard. It's like you're witnessing it with your neighbors and filming it, taping it, taking the pictures. So anyone who is interested in seeing the video or photos of that, you can go to his Instagram. So my question is how it started and why it's happening to you.
Those are two great questions.
Yeah.
I'll start by saying why did it happen first, and then how did it happen? Operating through the dimension of inner stillness, which is cosmic or universal consciousness, that is a beacon to the phenomena, and that is actually what unifies us with them. So operating through my multidimensional self, that dimension of stillness, you then begin to experience other dimensional realities, which includes UFOs and UAPs. Now, I know that we use the word UFO for unidentified, but to be honest, these are actually identified flying objects. Very soon after the initial sightings began, I began to go within and ask what, who, why, and I started receiving downloads of information. Essentially, these are parallel future versions of the multidimensional self. And as an individual ascends and rises in consciousness, and as the collective awakens, you begin to awaken to a multidimensional reality, which includes these objects. Now, the way it started, essentially the first sightings began October 8th, 2020. I had been cooped up in my townhouse writing Open Your Third Eye, and I decided this one particular evening to take a break and to go outside. I was doing some editing. And at exactly 6:43, I met up with my two neighbors in the backyard, and our backyard has no fence. It's all open. At 6:43 p.m., I noticed a hula hoop shaped object coming out of the west, and it was about 8 or 10 times the size of a hula hoop, no form of propulsion. And I actually recorded it, and I let out an expletive saying, like, what is that? The guys didn't know what to say to that. 5 minutes went by, and now I'm looking at the northern sky, so the far end of my backyard, and a pill-shaped object is noticed coming out of the clouds, but it's actually coming down at a very hard trajectory, and I actually recorded that as well. Now, those two initial sightings kicked open the door to now well over 1,000 encounters, over 500-600 videos. And I should say every encounter has been peaceful and uplifting. A few nights went by, and it's a very crisp, clear night. There's not a cloud in the sky, and I'm back there again with my neighbors chatting. And suddenly I got the vibrational hit, or an instant download or knowing, to move about 8 or 10 feet away from the guys. When I moved away from them, I was directed to look straight up, and coming over the townhouse at only about 200 feet was a black, silent triangle. And I actually felt thrill and exhilaration, almost like a remembering as this is taking place. My two neighbors came over, and Matt said, is that a flock of geese or a flock of birds? And I said, focus, guys. So we stood there for about 8 or 10 seconds, observing this, moving slowly over the backyard. We were frozen, locked on. What I distinctly remember is gray pads underneath it. we watched that move off towards, I'm going to say, the southeastern sky, and those initial sightings is what kicked off now all these encounters with various phenomena.
Wow. This is amazing. Literally, you're seeing almost every night. Where about you live now? In Canada, right?
Yeah, so I'm in the Waterloo region in southern Ontario, Canada. So I'm about an hour from Toronto.
In this area, like, sometimes like UFO appears at the place of, like, they have a vortex or special energy. It's something like that happening in your area, or just appearing to your backyard and then showing you who they are? What's happening there?
That's a great question. What I've come to understand is operating through that vibrational frequency that very much matches theirs. That is what has made it possible. I've spent, time at my sister's house, and we've had phenomena appear there. There was one evening in the summer a couple of years ago, and we had spontaneous flashes of light, and then an object came in. So people ask me that, but it's more so the energy and the vibrational frequency one is operating with. The more you're sort of in alignment with that universal consciousness, that is what allows also the discernment and the ability to detect the phenomena in the darkness. Often I can sense them even before I see them.
Yeah, like I'm one of the near-death experiencers. After had a near-death experience, I've seen them more often. And then some people say that as well, like after near-death experience, and then something shifted, we don't know what, but like they started to see UFOs or encountering the EDs and all these things happening. So it is matching their energy, or they can find us much easier, something like that.
What I'll say is they're actually keenly aware of our presence, and they're actually quite keenly aware of who is ready in terms of an encounter. For the time being, they're somewhat selective of who they're going to show themselves. They've said it. They've said two very distinct messages. Number one, they're not our saviors, because they already see an enlightened master within each and every one of us. What they're here to do is inspire us and eventually offer technology. It's all mind or consciousness based technology. So again, these are parallel future versions of the multi-dimensional self. So this is beyond, the technology is beyond human imagination. And what we're looking at is just a glimpse into that unseen realm that parallels this one. So it's always been present. The phenomena has always been present, essentially just out of mind, out of sight.
Yeah. How do you distinguish between satellites or drones and then those UFOs? And one more thing, we have technologies on this planet by now that we can make UFO, right? So probably you've seen some of the artificial human-made as well, but if you ever had that experience with the artificial human-made UFO, are there any differences, like as a feeling or connections?
That's a great
Weird
question. It's an excellent question. Do you know why? People will ask me, especially with the encounters with the Black Triangle, could it be military? And this is my response. The phenomena has demonstrated it's so advanced, it's had to break up its potential with me. So that very 3D looking black triangle that I first encountered with my neighbors has the ability to upgrade and downgrade its energy signature. There is a deep and profound telepathic connection between this object and myself. Beyond that, I will have this triangle, as well as other objects, often appear stationary, pretending to be stars. And the minute I call them out and I say, "You're not a star," they immediately go lights out. Or as they're going lights out, last night was a perfect example. Not only did it go lights out, it took off like a rocket towards the right. So the thing I'll say is there's a lot more going on beyond just the sightings. There's instant knowings, there's downloads. I am mindful when they say, there's a certain satellite, whether it's the ISS, what time. So I'm mindful of that. But for the most part, the objects that I'm describing are Merkabahs. So with the naked eye, you're seeing these things transform and change shape and color multiple times a second. And just to go back to the triangle, fast forward after that initial sighting as a very 3D triangle, appeared more energetically in May of the following year. And I was in the backyard with my neighbors this one particular evening, and I said, triangle, it's back. And it appeared more holographic, I want to say. And the guys turned around and they were astounded. It came in from the south about 300 feet, and before our eyes vanished. My neighbors were having a religious experience. They were quite amazed. A few minutes went by, and we're now in our respective positions again, and I'm facing the driveway. Now, if you think of a triangle, so wide base and very narrow at the top. If you cut that in two from top to bottom, you have two pieces. Now cut it horizontally. Now you have four. 5 minutes went by, and this object came in again, the triangle, more energetic, even more, coming together and moving apart as these four pieces, telling me I can transform, I can change, and then again, vanish before our eyes. Number one, I'll say they've been very gentle in their approach with me, even though I'm saying, you really don't have to come in close. But the consciousness-based technology, so that's my understanding, is that the vast majority of what I'm experiencing, objects powering up, responding to me, they're not of this world.
You're not only seeing the UFOs, but you're communicating with extraterrestrial. And then I have your book here. Ding! Cosmic Contact. The communication here is amazing. I highly recommend to the people who want to prepare to communicate and contact with them. So is this communication is a telepathic, or how do you communicate with them?
So essentially it's telepathic. I describe it almost as downloads of information, very similar to when I do automatic writing, which essentially I've done my entire life, but I really became aware of it. So the minute I put my attention on the phenomena, there's this vibrational frequency and exchange of just essentially instant knowing of who they are, what they are, and their intentions. And when I began to ask, because I wanted clarification, the specific questions, why are you showing up at this time? And the main reason is humanity is going through a collective shift in consciousness. There's this talk of age of Aquarius. So as human beings awaken to their spiritual nature, that is then reflected outwardly. And when one is operating, for example, you've made that shift into stillness, now anything and all things become possible. So the information, I describe it almost as wisdom being a one-way street from the higher self or from the multidimensional self to your local consciousness. So it's paying attention and listening and resonating. The other thing I should mention too, and this is very important, when I'm observing these objects, I'm not getting carried away in the sense that there's beliefs being created. I'm simply observing through the silent witness. That's how I operate essentially throughout my day. And so the purpose of this is, to mention this, is not to create more beliefs. And they've made it clear, we're not going to be another distraction. What would be the purpose of them showing up en masse without the majority of human beings knowing who they are and becoming heart-centered, essentially harmless in that sense, where you realize the oneness in everything, including multi-dimensional beings. So that is the main message behind it.
Do you think that same galactic families, there are so many different varieties, but the one particular one is communicating with you, or there are several different ones?
That's a great question. When I asked who am I dealing with and who am I communicating with, they essentially come through as a collective consciousness. And I actually I understand that quite a bit, because when you're operating through stillness, you're essentially no thing, you're nothing. So I know in this reality, we need names, Jiulio, Kaya, to be able to sort of relate. But I fully understand when they essentially are egoless, they don't have an identity. When they say we are the collective, I didn't feel a necessity to go any further. I'm sure names could be given, but they wanted to make the message more important, not an individual.
Yeah, so it's a collective. That makes sense. Yeah. So before asking you more questions, I'd like to ask you to share some of the videos or photos, whatever you have there, so that our audience can see what you're talking about.
I would love to. I'm going to start with the black triangle in energetic form. This took place May 9th, 2022. I had been observing it coming in as different configurations, sometimes 2 orbs, sometimes 10 orbs. On this particular evening, at just after 10 p.m., I captured it only 200 feet, maybe 150 feet from me, coming in, and I got about 12 seconds of that. So I'm going to start with that. This is the black triangle in energetic form. It has come in sometimes as 3 orbs in a very triangular shape. We have seen it on 2 or 3 occasions as a very 3D looking triangle, like a craft. But in this particular evening, it appeared as 5 sort of orb-like structures. And I say orb-like, but that's limiting. There's so much more to it. And I should mention this too, the phenomena is actually silent. What you're hearing in the background is a motorcycle coming to a stop at a 4-way. But since that time, I've captured it as 3 orbs and as 10 orbs. So it depends on the evening, essentially. Yeah, I think the next one I'm going to show you is the Merkabas. The Merkabas are light body ships, and they actually began appearing April 6th, 2023. Now, in this particular video, I'm focused on the red one on the right. What I didn't realize is I was being photobombed by a blue Merkaba coming in from the left. The other thing I'll mention is, to the naked eye, the red Merkaba appeared like a red triangle with extended wingtips. But these particular types of objects change shape and color multiple times a second. So I'm going to set that up.
There are 2 of them, are they?
Yes, I wasn't aware of the blue one.
Oh. Yeah, when it stopped, it looked like the stars, right?
They essentially look like moving stars. And they began, like I said, they began appearing April of 2023. And I think I've captured now about 30 or 40 of those. The interesting thing is the blue Merkaba has been appearing very often lately, even darting through the clouds. So this is going to be the black triangle as 3 orbs. And this was August 2022. 2022, I'm going to say between May and September, the black triangle came in as quite a variety of orb-like objects. So here we go.
Wow. So how far do you think it is from you?
That was probably 300 feet, maybe 350. It wasn't very high. I'll also now share, I have it as 2 orbs, and it was only, I'm going to say, less than 100 feet from me. Don't blink.
Mm.
There it is. These are stationary, but I should say this, the triangle has been coming in the last 2 or 3 months, coming in fairly close, powering up, but maintaining brightness. So I'm going to say the encounters are intensifying, and it's not unusual to have, I'm going to say, at least 5 to maybe 10 to 15 encounters over an hour period.
So is there any particular time of the day that they come often, or anytime just you go out? Doesn't matter the time is.
For the past year or 2, I've been going out early mornings, and I've been encountering them. Evening for sure. I've had a couple of daytime sightings. But most of the time during the day, I'm either writing or teaching. But those initial sightings, even on October 8th, those are at 6:43 and 6:48 p.m. It was actually dusk, so it was still fairly light out. They're just so obvious. But the phenomena, for the most part, there's a lot going on in the unseen, because there's been videos even where I'm actually recording an object and I'm getting photobombed either by an energy or an entity or another object. So it's just being aware that there's a lot more going on in the background.
Yeah. So have you really ever had a close encounter physically, like with them, or, any experience that you want to share?
That's a great question. I've actually had 2 encounters that I haven't even shared yet with anyone, and I'm more than happy to share them. Last summer, I was in the backyard and I got sort of an instant knowing or vibrational hit to turn around and look behind me. Now, there's a movie that came out many years ago called Predator, and in this movie, the alien can become invisible, but almost look like water. So it looks like it's not really visible. It blends in the background. So on this particular evening, I got the hit to turn around, and coming about 20 feet above me, towards me, was essentially a being. It came over me, went vertical, and began to descend over the hedges. The interesting thing is, as it began to descend, the fireflies that were out that night began to really light up. And what happened was, one of my neighbors opened the door to come out, and it just took off straight up and just left. So that was about a year ago. The other thing I'll say is, during, I'm going to say maybe January, February, it was almost partially there, but a being appeared probably 8 or 10 feet from me. It appeared sort of orange, but it was more energetic and more not there than there. And in terms of vibrational frequency, I really didn't sense much difference, but it came for about 2 seconds and then sort of just went out.
So from your point of view, what's happening to the humanity in the coming years? Like the disclosures and we're gonna experience.
What I would say is, from one perspective, believe nothing in terms of an official narrative, because an official narrative, I say this often, imagine waiting for disclosure from the very people who've been keeping it from us. So it's sort of like enlightenment. If you're waiting for enlightenment, someone else to give you enlightenment, you'll be waiting forever. So what I would say is, if one is interested in experiencing the phenomena themselves, do some inner work, meditate, practice letting things go. And what that all does is raises your vibrational frequency. So you want to come from a heart-centered space, and then let go for the possibility of a sighting, because they're not moved by frustration or anything like that. But you know, there are a lot of people, I know some people on Twitter who are experiencing the phenomena, and so that's sort of like a soft disclosure. So these are small accounts where it's coming out. So in terms of the official narrative, there's really not going to be much there in terms of, because now they're almost backtracking from what I've been seeing, that, oh no, they don't exist. So what I'll say is, you know, it's a personal experience. So if one is closed off to the phenomena, if one chooses not to believe that they're a reality, that's perfectly fine and well. But the truth of the matter is that when you're operating through your spiritual self and you're making shifts and you're operating through some greater clarity, you begin to realize not only who you are spiritually, but where you are. The spiritual world and the manifested world are one. There is no separation. There's only the belief in separation. So that's what I see happening. There may be, you know, little bits coming here and there, but really it's going to be from experiencers who have a deep understanding of the phenomena. And I should mention this again, you know, over 1,000 encounters, every single one has been peaceful, uplifting. Is it possible for someone to have a bad experience? It is, and that could be something that their soul signed up for. Or if they approach the phenomena through fear, you're gonna, if someone is approaching it through fear, it's going to be fearful no matter what, even if it was a benign encounter. So I think it was important to mention that.
Yeah, that is so true. There are so many messages probably you got from them, but what was the most important message for the humanity that ET beings that they told you to share?
Some of the messages have been, and it's incredible because they reflect a lot of my writing since 2005, and it's essentially a universal message. Remember who you are, be not afraid, that this shift in consciousness is necessary because of how, in terms of the individual and collective ego, has essentially become unmanageable. So we're coming to the end of the experimentation, the experiment of separation. And once human beings, you know, begin more and more make that shift beyond separation to oneness, that's when you'll see more and more people experiencing what is already present, the multidimensional reality that we're already in. So the key takeaways are: remember who you are, fear not. You know, with so much change and upheaval going on in the outer world, it's important to be an observer of it and not a reactor. Because when you allow that to be repeated in your consciousness, you're now taking it on. If you're standing in your strength and centered in your spiritual beingness, it doesn't matter what's happening out there, because you are centered in your stillness and you're operating through developed faith and trust, knowing that a way has been made.
If anyone wants to contact you, what is the best way?
So if anyone wants to contact me, the best way is through the website, JiulioConsiglio.com. My socials are Jiulio Consiglio, where I've posted not only hundreds of encounters, but a lot of my spiritual teachings.
Thank you.
I love these conversations. Thank you. And I'm just honored. I'm very blessed. Thank you.